From the north side of the San Francisco Bay to Singapore, welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, business owner, lecturer, author, master trainer, Tiaja. With over 30 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, he will challenge the fitness between your ears. So prepare your mind, body, and soul for the revolution of self-care, the evolution of fit, with real talk about real people, real health, real fitness, and the real deal behind our present illness culture. Real talk every time, all the time. Get weekly insights on how to shift your thinking, emoting, eating, training, hydrating, goal setting, and resting for you, the everyday athlete. You can cheat your fitness, but you can't steal your health flow. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Let's flow.
Welcome to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio, where we challenge the fitness between your ears. I'm your host, Tiaja. You know, you and I weren't there when this important event took place in Minneapolis in 1999. But picture this, a long line of limos and taxis pull up to an office complex on South 6th Street and let out 11 well-dressed passengers. All 11 are men, and these 11 men represent most of what we eat. Well, who are they? They are heads of America's largest companies. Among them, they control food empires, along with 700,000 employees and $280 billion in annual sales. There are no reporters, no minutes taken, in fact, no recordings whatsoever. Rivals. Any other day, the CEOs and company presidents gather for a meeting that is as secretive as it is rare. On their agenda is one item, the emerging epidemic of obesity. Pillsbury was playing host at its corporate headquarters. Nestle was in attendance, as were Kraft, Nabisco, General Mills, Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, and Mars. These were the prominent players in the industrial food industry, fierce competitors who were coming together to discuss the rising obesity epidemic in America. And mind you, these are the same companies that turned unsweetened yogurt into Yoplait, which is to say they turned an unsweetened, otherwise healthy option into a dessert for breakfast. These are also the same companies who gave our children Lucky Charms and Cocoa Puffs and Captain Crunch as breakfast alternatives to more traditional breakfast choices like oatmeal or bacon and eggs. Remarkably, when Americans were eating bacon and eggs for breakfast versus Yoplait, Dunkin' Donuts, and Starbucks coffee, there wasn't an obesity epidemic, but I digress. Yoplait made a whopping $500 million that year, and so they decided to do away with the labor-intensive spoon for kids and give them a squeeze tube option called Go-Gurt. You remember that? By year's end, Go-Gurt had hit $100 million in sales. What all these companies had in common, besides their blind lust for profits, was the three pillars of processed food: salt, sugar, trans and saturated fats, and they used lots of it in order to turn their products into sensations. These men were more like social engineers than CEOs, more Machiavellian than ingenious. Let's take a moment to think about that. Salt was processed in dozens of ways to maximize the jolt of the taste buds. Saturated fats would add as the caloric delivery system, while sugar excited the reward centers of the brain. All three ingredients in carefully parsed out amounts essentially created a culture of addicts, and these 11 men understood this all too well. When it came to the obesity epidemic, their companies were on the front line relative to causality. See, no one chooses to be obese or overweight. However, as a personal trainer, when I consider the other end of the spectrum, obsession with losing weight and narcissism, I'd rather you be overweight. Why? Because as I've often stated on numerous occasions on these broadcasts, having a six-pack doesn't mean you're healthy, nor does losing a bunch of weight, and most of it's muscle and bone loss. What I find ironic, actually tragic, is the sheer number of people who have been duped into believing that somehow their lives will get better or will be better if only they could lose the weight and fit into a smaller dress or pant size. Now, I'm not discounting the fact that such an achievement isn't esteemable. It is, at least for a while, and frankly, it should be. Still, health is more than the body. It is mind, body, and emotional intelligence, or soul. So it doesn't matter how great you look to others if inwardly you are battling depression or your personal demons. In fact, aren't those the very days we suffer the most from bouts of dysmorphia? Those days where we can't stand to look at anyone, let alone ourselves, in the mirror? When it comes to our health, we're going to have to think deeper. Any less is merely giving over your emotional intelligence to an industry whose only purpose is to profit from your dissatisfaction with you. Today will be just another day unless you decide today that it won't be. It is Tuesday, March 19, 2019. Let's flow.
You've probably never considered the mouthfeel of fat or the bliss points of sugary snacks, but you can be assured that food scientists are considering exactly that in an attempt to make processed food even more irresistible. Here now with more on the science behind our overconsumption, Michael Moss, reporter with the New York Times and author of Salt, Sugar, and Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us. Welcome to TVO. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pretty scary story, actually, so let's get into it. These three things, salt, sugar, fat, how did you land on those three evils as the things you wanted to write about?
I was actually writing about pathogens, first in peanuts and then hamburger. And one of my most trusted sources in the processed food industry said, look, Michael, as tragic as these contaminants are, if you want to look at something that's making lots of people sick, look at what our industry is intentionally adding to their products with absolute control over them. And he was most tied to the meat industry, so he was first thinking about salt. But that, because salt is used in copious amounts in processed meat, but then that led to sugar and fat, and it's the holy trinity. It's the holy grail, if you will, of
Unholy
ingredients.
Trinity.
Well, it's been called that, on which the processed food industry survives and focuses so much of their effort.
Did I read right, $280 billion a year they do in business?
Actually, it's up to, if you count processed foods that are delivered to the food restaurant industry, it's up to $1 trillion a year. Yes, it's a huge industry.
I'm not going to pretend this is an original question, but I'm sure people want to know. Having written this, do you now change the way you eat?
A little bit. I have two kids, boys, 8 and 13.
So
We're trying to...
Can't
avoid it. They have an incredible sweet tooth. We try to do a few things, though, engage them a little bit. The other day, my wife, Eve, set a limit of 5 grams sugar per serving, boys, in the cereal aisle. And an interesting thing happened. They now, when they go shopping, becomes a bit of an Easter egg hunt for them. They look for those cereals that meet that limit, and they're there. They may have to reach down low, as I explain in the book, or get me to reach up high, because the ones at eye level tend to be the ones most loaded. But they are there, and you can actually make the grocery store work for you rather than it control you.
Okay, we don't do commercials here, but let me guess. The 5 gram limit, Lucky Charms, Captain Crunch, Alphabets, Honeycomb.
Pretty much rule those out.
Those
by
aren't happening.
Far. Cheerios, the unsweetened Cheerios, the ones they started with before they added lots of sugar. Special K, Total they like. And once a week, I slip them whole oatmeal that I cook myself, actually. And there's an interesting lesson in that, which is this whole thing about convenience in processed foods is really overhyped. It doesn't take that much extra effort to make things from scratch. And oatmeal is one of those beautiful things where throw it in the pan with a little bit of water or milk, make your coffee, do whatever you're doing, come back to it in a few minutes, and then you can add the raisins, the apple slices, the maple syrup, or the sugar, and you're in control, and that's what it's all about.
Well, when you put brown sugar on it, though, that's
but you don't have to put as much as they do. And this is not a book about don't eat fat, sugar, or salt. You couldn't get through my house not eating any of those things. It's not about abstention. It's about moderation. And again, us as consumers being the decision makers about how much, as opposed to the processed food companies and their bottom line.
What's your go-to guilty pleasure?
Potato chips.
Chips?
Yeah, I'm a salt guy.
So salt and vinegar.
Sweets are okay. Chocolate's no problem. I love cheese, but I think that's actually for as much of the salt in the cheese as the fat. Potato chips.
How sophisticated have the industries become in hiding these three things?
Well, let's start with the using first. They have on staff some of the smartest scientists I've certainly ever met. I start off the book with a legend in the industry his name is Howard Moskowitz, trained in mathematics and experimental psychology at Harvard. And he has he calls them engineered, some of the icons in the grocery store. And he walked me through his recent creation of a soda for Dr. Pepper, where he had to create a new flavor. Absolutely amazing what went into that development. He had to take 61 separate formulations, each slightly varying from the next, and then subject those to 3,000 consumer taste testings, threw it all into his computer, did his regression analysis to come up with the very perfect one formula that was guaranteed to fly off the shelves, and he did it.
And in spite of all that, new Coke still happened. Go figure.
We can talk about the Coke-Pepsi wars if you want, because that is one of my favorite parts of the book.
Let me come back to it, because
Yeah.
I want to go somewhere else. But I know that's one of the things I learned, that nothing is left to chance. It is absolutely the most remarkable, and yet there's still some of these big cock-ups, right, that happen.
Yep, and
Anyway.
on one level, these companies are usually fiercely competitive with each other, but on the other hand, the target is always the consumer.
Yeah. Okay, let's start with, of your three evil triplets here, sugar.
Yep, I do start with sugar in the book. It's probably the most powerful of the three ingredients because we are all hardwired for sugar.
What does that mean, we're hardwired
Every
for?
one of our 10,000 taste buds in the mouth and even going down the esophagus to the stomach are ready for that sweet taste. The instant it hits your mouth, they send signals to the brain. It races to the pleasure center of the brain, which basically says, Michael, that was great. Let's have more of that. Sugar is instant calories, especially kids are hardwired for sugar because they're growing. They need calories. The brain sees sugar as instant growth.
Do we infer from that the manufacturers will try to inject in their products as much sugar as they possibly can?
No, not at all, because there's a limit to the amount of sweetness even kids will like. It's much more precise than that. And Howard Moskowitz explained to me that our liking for sugar looks something like a bell-shaped curve. You can do this experiment yourself, and your viewers can. Take coffee. If you like sugar in coffee, keep adding sugar until you get to the very perfect amount where you love it. Keep adding more.
No good.
Keep adding more, and you're going to go, oh, yuck, at some point. So Howard's whole mission as other food scientists is to hit the perfect spot for sugar, the perfect amount, not too much, not too little, and they have a name for it.
The bliss point.
The bliss point.
What is that? The
He
bliss
helped coin it. It was actually a mathematical term that a colleague of his coined back in the 70s, totally unrelated to food. Howard was showing him one day his work. He was working for the Army at the time, which had a whole different problem. They were trying to get soldiers to eat more in the field rather than to eat less. And Howard was looking at sugar as the one allure that might get them to eat more food. And Howard said, yeah, he was telling this colleague, yeah, here's the perfect amount, and here's what the bell curve is. And this colleague goes, oh, Howard, that's your bliss point. And Howard, being a great marketer, goes, oh, yeah, that's wonderful. But mind you, this is an internal term. They don't put these on packages and talk about it externally. It's for themselves, but it really captures what they're going after there.
If you hit the bliss point, does that actually encourage you to want to consume more?
Yeah, sure. It's going to make you like the product. And again, before we go too far on the evil empire notion of these companies, they make a really strong argument that they never intended to make us obese or otherwise ill. They are doing what one would expect companies to do, which is to make their products as utterly, irresistibly, undeniably attractive, convenient, and low cost as well. And those are important items because besides taste, salt, sugar, fat are huge miracle ingredients for them on a number of fronts. And so, yeah, they're wanting to make their products as utterly irresistible as possible, and they make no bones about that.
Now here are my 2 cents, and feel free to keep the change. Look, there are many things you can do to change the health of your body and fast track you on the course to eviscerate visceral fat. But I'm going to share with you some bullet points from my long anticipated book, Stuck, Why You Can't Lose Weight. Now granted, most if not all of these are going to seem overly simplistic, even counterintuitive to many of you, but it's only because the fitness industry has you believing that the only good workout is the one where you're barely able to crawl out of the gym or you need oxygen or hospitalization. That's the sure prescription for injury, and it's the primary reason the majority of people quit or are fearful of trying anything new. Now hear me out. I want you to receive these suggestions with an open mind and then integrate them into your daily practice. Okay, number 1, walk fast for 5 minutes, then increase the time by 1 minute daily until you can walk fast without running for 10 minutes. After 10 consecutive days, you should have leveled up to the stage where you can run, not sprint, just faster than walking for 1 minute, followed by 4 minutes minutes of fast walking for a total of 10 minutes once a week. Now make sure you continue the 10-minute fast walk the other days you're not running. Got it? Okay. Number 2, eat something you like each day, then eat something you don't. Number 3, drink something you like each day, then drink something you don't. Particularly water. I know a lot of my clients struggled with drinking water. We had to come up with all these creative ways to get them to drink water. Add lemon, add this, whatever. Drink something that you like, then drink something that you don't. And if it's water, drink a whole lot more of it. Number 4, go to bed 10 minutes earlier, then increase that by 10 minutes until you reach an hour earlier. Number 5, wake up 10 minutes earlier. No more hitting the snooze button incessantly. Get up and get going. This will train your mind and body to anticipate a new challenge each day. Number 6, read something positive, whether the Bible or positive affirmations for 5 minutes in the morning upon awakening and every night before bed. Number 7, stretch for 5 minutes daily. Then add 1 minute per week for 5 weeks. I threw in a few bonuses because this is what I know. I know that the reason you're stuck has nothing to do with your desire or even efforts. The reason you're stuck is because you have trained your body and mind to negotiate change rather than initiate it. See, I can negotiate with you every day for a year, and next year at this very time, if we have not reached an agreement, we will still be in negotiations. In essence, this is what you have been doing with your diet plans and endless workout routines. But when you are really ready for change, permanent change, you will no longer negotiate change. You will initiate change. You will take decisive action steps, plain and simple. And that's what each step represents. Each step represents you taking action. They also represent your willingness to employ a new strategy, which the mind and body can't adapt to because it's so multifaceted in its approach, not to mention it is counterintuitive. See, your mind and body expect more squats or burpees or sit-ups or less calories, a host of other things, but definitely not more sleep or reading or stretching or relaxing or eating. That doesn't make any sense, does it? Well, if you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Actually, it makes common sense. After all, that's really the point, isn't it? Dear friends, I wish above all things that you prosper just as your soul prospers. You've been listening to Urban X Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, Tiaja. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, Snapchat, as well as all of your other favorite social media. One last thing, show your support by hitting that subscribe button and sharing this podcast with your family and friends, or download our app at tiajae.podbean.com. Finally, don't forget to stop through our flagship website at www.urbanxfitness.net, where you will find our online stores, the Urban Experience Fit Stores 1 and 2. Once there, you can download our unique home and gym workouts, our dietary menus, as well as purchase some remarkably bold teas and spark your own revolution of self-care. Then head over to our small library of my hand-picked, personally endorsed nutritional products. Okay, got it? Okay, then get it. Until next week, as always, walk in health and peace.